So, someone whom we have not talked about in a long time, Keith, and you found this, and there's actually 3 Stellantis stories that we can just kind of like get into here.
Or 4, or 5.
Or 4, whatever. So apparently, Mercedes and Stellantis have invested into Factorial Energy. They're a company that has a breakthrough in
oh, wait, what? What kind of battery technology?
That would be solid state.
I hate to say I told you so.
How many times have we said that the batteries as we know them now are a bridge to get to where we're going?
Like just twice. I think that's all we've said on this. I hope everybody knows I'm just like, I'm seething with sarcasm today. I think it almost every time we've been on the air, we've talked about anytime an EV comes up, solid state is not too far behind in conversation.
No, solid-state batteries, I do believe, is the way ahead even further. And then I think it'll change from there. I mean, they're looking at alternative materials to cobalt, which will reduce the cost of these things as well. Similar types of situations went on in the engine component side of the business, like valves, for example, on heavy-duty diesel applications. Metallurgical stuff, like the cost of an exhaust valve on, say, a Caterpillar 3500 series, they're big valves. They're well over 2-inch head diameters, and the stem diameters are 1/2 inch in some cases. And they're made out of Inconel, which is a cobalt-based alloy. Those things cost, well over $100 a piece just for the valve, so it's very expensive.
So it's magic
during those
then?
time frames, yeah, it's magic pretty much. But the thing is that we as consumers are always looking for the best bang for the buck. You don't necessarily want a value engineered component. You want an alternative that works as well and you can benefit from it, but at a lower cost. And we're always striving to do that in the automotive industry. And this sector of the automotive industry is no different than that, which is finding a better way at a more affordable cost at the end of the day for consumers, which is going to tie into some other things that we're going to talk about here today. The cost of these things are just huge. Electric vehicle costs are way up.
That's why Sir Richard Dyson got out of the EV development. Yeah. For those of you that don't know, Dyson, yes, that guy, the vacuum cleaner manufacturer, was test piloting an EV, an electric vehicle program, and he bankrolled that himself, and basically got out of it because it was cost prohibitive. He just and they were looking down the road of solid state, no pun intended. That's where he wanted to go.
Yeah, and I think that people have, when you're an entrepreneur like that, and you've got so many irons in the fire anyway, it's kind of best to kind of sit back and let the technology kind of catch up with you. Let somebody else focus on that, which is like what we talked about with the Ford Google thing. Why not just let those guys concentrate on what they specialize in, and we'll just kind of tag along with you and help invest into that technology.
Let me ask you a question, Jay.
Sure.
Sidebar here.
Okay.
Have you seen Sir Richard Dyson? You've seen what he looks like, right? You've seen him on commercials and stuff.
Sure.
You seen Tim Cook from Apple?
Yeah.
Same person?
I think they could pass for
just
twins.
Change the accent.
They're in the same corridor.
I think maybe that's actually going on. You think it's the same guy and he's running 2 separate companies. I got it. So,
could be. It's another breakthrough in Viagra.
Iron Man 2. Wow, this just went way off the deep end. Iron Man 2, there was the bad guy in the movie. His name was the Mandarin, and he was played by a great actor, Sir Ben Kingsley. Lots of knights in today's discussion.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Ben Kingsley's a very accomplished Shakespearean actor. But he played this role, and it turns out at the end of the movie, I don't want to spoil it for you guys, it's been out 10 years, but he actually was just a hired gun. He was an actor portraying a bad guy. He was just playing a role. Right. He was kind of a puny little wimp that played table tennis all day, right? It guy sort of came out at the end of the movie that he wasn't really the bad guy. So he was an actor. He was a character playing a character playing a character, right, in a movie. So I could potentially see this guy that's doing the Tim Cook, Richard Dyson thing. Same deal, right? They just hired a guy. He shows up on camera to be the CEO, right? Mm-hmm. Changes his accent. Yeah. One of these days, he's going to forget which company he's representing, and he's going to show up with the Richard Dyson accent at an Apple press conference, and then you're in trouble, right? I'm sorry. Were you trying to have a serious conversation here about solid state batteries?
Oh, no. I think people know us all too well that we can't go there without going there. That's just kind of the way we are. We have to. We would like to weave you in and out of the story and keep the connectivity going. But so for those of you who don't know who Factorial Energy is, they're a Massachusetts-based 6-year-old startup developer of solid-state batteries.
Lots of stuff going on in that area, probably because of MIT, because you have robotics companies that started in that area not too long ago too. Right,
and here's what's nice, and I think this is really cool. When I started looking into this and doing a little bit of research on who these guys were and who were involved, Mercedes-Benz and Stellantis are not two small players at all. I mean, they're pretty big conglomerate. Huge corporations. What I found interesting is that say maybe 10 years ago, both of these companies were like, "No, we're not going there with EVs. We're not going there." But now you have them. They see the potential, but they also see the direction the industry is going. And if they don't do something, they're going to get left behind. Then you may not have the costs to move forward, and we'll get into a little bit of that too. But what I found interesting is that, Hyundai and Kia in October of 2021 also invested into these guys, telling me that these are companies that are investing strongly into the EV world, and this is where it's at, and this is where it's going.
Time and time again, we've told you guys this current generation of EVs is not the end game. This is basically a transitional stage. We all know there's problems with the batteries now. They're too volatile. The range is an issue. The charging time is an issue. And then it's kind of circular back to the volatility if you charge them too fast and all that. Just ask Chevy Bolt owners. But
absolutely.
This is where it's going. I really, yes. I think, we've seen
it is definitely
the
where it's going. This is the next
wall.
Yep, this is the next step, and it's a space saver. The way they can produce these things, as well as it's like you just said, it's a lot less volatile, cost effective. There's a number of reasons why this is going to be a win. So the company did explain that its proprietary solid electrolyte material and factorial electrolyte systems technology, or what they call FEST, enables it to produce safe and reliable solid-state battery cells, which as first in the world reached 40 amp hour capacity at room temperature.
Well, now
that's pretty huge.
Okay, and so this is where it's going to have to be done, is with these super smart startups that are venture capitalist funded in many cases, and the reason is because of cost. And this is something else that Jay and I have talked about a lot. Now, so let's just carry this thought into, I don't know if we're going to end up doing 2 segments here or running them all together, but Stellantis CEO just recently came out and talked exactly about that issue of cost in electrification, right?
Yes.
And do you have it? I have it if you don't.
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, you're exactly right. My intention was we have a few Stellantis pieces of news that we want to keep on the same page here because it's all relative to what we're trying to get across today. So yes, go.
So for those of you that are not as familiar with the brand Stellantis, or I guess the parent company Stellantis, as some of us are, that includes companies like Jeep, of course, Dodge, Chrysler. Then you get into some of the European lines, Fiat, Citroen, Opel, Maserati, if you're into the luxury side, Vauxhall, Ram, of course, if I didn't say Ram, the truck line.
Jeep, Ram,
Yeah, and Alfa Romeo, just to name a few, okay? So
huge.
The CEO, Carlos Tavares, made a statement recently, and this is all around the concept of electrification that we were just talking about, and Stellantis is investing in, and we're about to tell you in just here in a few minutes on another way that they're investing in electrification. But he said there was a Reuters Next conference, and he said that basically they're getting external pressure from governments of the world and from investors to go EV. And this is another thing that we've talked about time and time again, that the automotive industry is driven and has always been driven by peer pressure. It is what it is. Right. It's unfortunate in some cases, but it's just that's the way it's always been. Okay.
Yep.
So they're reactionary to some extent. Now, then you get into examples like Rivian and Tesla, where those guys just went out and basically bucked the system, but they took huge risks in doing so. The larger companies like Stellantis and Ford and General Motors, they have to be more careful because they have to answer to shareholders. They have to, their profit margins are on the line. Okay, if they can't, if they fail, it's a big deal. That's a bigger deal.
That's exactly right.
So he basically came out and said the costs are too steep right now, and we can't it would take basically us passing on 50% of the electrification cost to the consumer. Ain't nobody going to buy one.
No, they're not.
Now, I take a little bit of a disagreement with him because I don't think he's been watching us, because we have pointed out, Jay, and I can hear you got a bone to pick with this, but that's where your Christian Koenigsegg's of the world do it in the hypercar line where the cost is exorbitant, and they're able to absorb that, and then it trickles down, in the Maserati side, for example, and then it trickles down into the consumer grade stuff, right?
Right. And I think the biggest fear that Carlos has is, like you said, passing the 50% on to the consumer just doesn't work. I agree with that 100%. It can in certain sectors, but not the average consumer. Okay, and that's what I think he clearly states in that, is that we've got to be very mindful that not the average consumer can afford a $120,000 all-electric vehicle. And he's right now. But I think that in 10 years, that mindset is going to change, because you're going to see a shift in where consumers are putting their dollars.
Yeah.
And if you're building a product where the cost is more costly in the upfront than in the long run, I think that people could get on with that program. Whereas for us now as consumers, our costs actually come at the end of the life of the vehicle rather than in the beginning of. You see what I'm saying?
So now here is the catalyst okay, so if we go down that road like you just said, where people look to spend a little more, part of the problem here, and Carlos, I know you weren't at the helm when this whole problem started, but the auto industry has just to some extent themselves to blame for this. Allow me to explain, okay? We have when Henry Ford revolutionized the assembly line all the way through probably the 1960s, when my parents were buying Fords. There was this, people kept cars for longer.
Right.
Okay? They were heavier. They were cost of inflation adjusted probably a little bit more than they are today.
I think so.
We didn't have the credit cards that we have today. We didn't have the lines of credit like we have today. It was a different game. You saved up, and then you for years, and then you bought what you wanted, okay, or what you could afford. The automotive industry, and there are other industries that are guilty of this as well, have gotten into this whole trap of planned obsolescence. And so they're making cars with the expectation that you're not going to keep that car more than 5 years. They've got lease programs where you keep it for 2 or 3 years. And so they are counting on you coming back in line at the dealership in 5 years or less to buy another one.
Right.
And they need that revenue, and they have factored it now into their model of revenue. The problem with that is what we have today. So Carlos said there basically are two paths through this. We sell fewer cars, or we accept lower profit margins. Well, if you sell fewer cars, you're going to raise the price, and then your profit margins would not be lower.
Exactly.
How about we sell fewer cars, and we make them to last?
Right, which I think the EV of any type of vehicle out there is the answer to that. And that's why I said your cost up front will...
And it's less pollution, right? It's less cars than landfills. It's less just... It's a greener, if you will, concept. Keep that car on the road longer. Build it with quality.
Right.
Charge more for it if you need to. But stop this nonsense of planned obsolescence.
Right. And I think that this time that we're in right now deserves to have, and I'm sure someone's already out there looking at the statistics on this, the analytics overall of what the average consumer has invested into their vehicle and what their overall life of the vehicle cost to operate actually is on an EV. You know, we're so new into this. I don't think we probably have a bit of a cloud over that, so to speak, because there's so many variables over the last 10 years of the electric vehicle market.
And one of the big variables right now, Jay, is if you buy an EV in today's world, what the manufacturers aren't going to admit this or tell you this, but you're really investing in future development. Like, that's not... The stuff they're selling now is kind of reactionary because peer pressure has demanded it. It's not ultimately where we're going to end up long term, right? So that's a huge variable. Like, you're probably not going to... I don't know. I mean, that Tesla might be around for 10 years. That Ford Mach-E might be on the road for 10 years. You might keep it that long, but I kind of don't think so.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like, if you want to give an analogy to this thing, and I know I'm going to have people hit me over the head of this. There'll be comments about it. Please feel free to comment. We love that. And if we pick your comment on our mailbag, you'll listen to it. But you got to subscribe to our podcast and our channel to get that. But vinyl went the way of 8-track. 8-track went the way of cassette. Cassette went the way of CD, compact disc. Compact disc has now gone the way of streaming. And this is... Consumer habits change, but they don't change on their own. They change because the technology changes. You guys asked for this. This is you put this in front of us. And when you show someone something new and how viable of a product that it is, and the growth potential, what's expected down the road from it, it works. I mean, but now, you've got... I talked to someone the other day about how the explosion of vinyl has come back. The drop of the needle on the record, that sort of stuff. There's always... We all love to go back to our past and just relive those things. That's why we restore vehicles. That's why electric, like the Illuminator, is a viable solution to being able to restore those old vehicles in the future. There's a lot of things here at play. And I think that this is a really good hard look at the future of them saying, and he asked the great question, how do we get over this? How do we get beyond this? The problem that Stellantis had, or back in the day, it was Daimler, Chrysler, Jeep, whatever, before Stellantis took over, like you said, this was kind of an inherited problem. They did not invest into the electric vehicle side of the industry until it was almost too late, right?
Reactionary, peer pressure driven.
That's it.
They don't spend their money like, for example, like Honda. Maybe I'm thinking on the motorcycle or the power sports side, or Yamaha, where they're pushing the envelope with an R&D division.
Exactly.
Now, to be fair, got a little news here. Stellantis. Now, I found this on CarBuzz, but Stellantis does have some active R&D going on.
I think this is cool.
And I kind of disagree with the title. I understand it was just to get clicks and eyeballs, but it says Stellantis is building a real-life slot car racing track. So, kind of. I mean, the concept is basically, if you've not ever owned a slot car, you're missing out. But you had two cars that could race simultaneously, and there was a little gun with a trigger on it, and you could give it power, and they were electric, and there was little slots on the track that these cars drove on, and they have a full-size IRL, in real life version, if you will, of that. And it has wireless charging for vehicles, for electric vehicles, every so often, just as I'm looking at it here, it looks like they're maybe about every 20, 30 feet apart. And they're basically, they're wirelessly sending power, in true Nikola Tesla fashion, to these vehicles as they travel around a closed loop course, right?
Absolutely.
They're not really racing. Yeah. There's no control of them like a slot car.
No, it's just a track. It's a proving ground, basically, is what it is. And they've wired this thing up to be able to charge these vehicles.
Yeah, well, you can do it with your phones now. I mean, they do have to be within a certain range. Right. And they're saying that the results are encouraging, which is a good thing.
And again, you absolutely are. Now, check this out. Here's an argument that keeps coming up about, well, we go all electric vehicles, people are going to lose jobs. Well, somebody's inventing this stuff and manufacturing this stuff. I mean, that's creating jobs.
Well, I guess my question to that would be, if you want to play the part of that person that would make that argument, is what jobs? Which jobs specifically?
Right. Yeah,
engine rebuilders?
Things shift and change.
Is that the jobs you're talking about? I mean, you've got the AERA hat on today. I mean, is that the argument?
I think that there is the big fear that's going to happen, and I personally don't see that. I don't see it taking those jobs away.
I don't know that it would. Right. So you may have to learn a new technology, but there's still going to be some sort of propulsion system in these automobiles, right?
Exactly.
And I would hope that we don't get in this habit of, like we just talked about, just throwing the cars away when they get to 100,000 miles, or if the coils in these electric cars go bad, that we don't just throw the whole car away, right? Like, can we not rebuild electric motors also? I mean, sure.
It's already happening. Yeah, it's already happening.
So where are these jobs that are taken away? I mean, you guys leave us a comment. Tell us if you are in that school of thought and you think that the introduction of the electric vehicle by the automotive manufacturers like Ford, GM, Stellantis is getting rid of jobs. Where? What jobs?
Right.
I want to hear from you. What jobs?
Right. I mean, Ford's investing billions of dollars. I mean, they're not just investing it to the air.
They're building out massive facilities,
plants,
right?
Yeah, and that in itself creates jobs in the construction world, that sort of stuff. The electricians that it takes to wire these buildings up, and then the people to be, in the manufacturing process of these things. The human element will be there to some degree. I look, it's an argument. I get it. I understand, but I also take a look at the last 2 years, and Keith and I have spoken about this, that if you didn't figure out how to work from home or kind of change up what you were doing over the last 2 years to create income for yourself, then you've got to make adjustments at some time in your life.
I'm not very computer literate.
Yeah, that's exactly hitting the head of the nail.
So you don't want to learn.
You hear that,
right?
Right.
Basically, that's time. I mean, do you think people that when Henry Ford refined the assembly line, do you think he got a lot of people going, I don't think those things are ever going to beat my trusty old horse? I mean, that's laughable now, but
they did. I mean, they did. That's exactly. I mean, you hear that all the time. The industry's changing. It's going by way of the horse and carriage, the horse and buggy. I hear that, but you have people like myself who embraces the automotive industry in every way, shape, and form. No matter what it'll be in 30 years, I still have an extreme love and passion for the industry itself. My dad as well. I mean, you guys have seen my dad on a podcast or heard him on a podcast, and he and I have had great conversations about the electric vehicle. He thinks it's great. He loves innovation. But my dad is also one to innovate. He has that passion to figure out something, how to do something better. I mean, that's why the man built his own CNC machine. I mean, it's just, he's 78 plus years old, and he uses a computer. He runs CAD design. I mean, I'm just saying.
Listening to the podcast on his iPhone, right?
Don't limit. Yeah, absolutely. Don't limit yourself by not trying.
Well,
Don't say, "Oh, that'll never work."
Yeah.
You
So,
know?
I mean, that's kind of what, the whole Steve Jobs, that's why he was Steve Jobs, right? That was his,
Exactly.
his mentality. So just to close the loop on this, this is it's called the Arena del Futuro, Arena of the
Right.
Future, if you prefer in English. It's outside of Milan.
Yep.
They are testing buses on it. It's
Yep.
1,050 meters long right now. It uses dynamic wireless power transfer, DWPT, kind of industry jargon there.
Which is pretty much the same thing as a cell phone charging,
Yeah,
right? You just
it's
lay it down on the
induction
pad that
charging.
charges, right? Yep, induction charging. Yep.
And and they're testing it with buses, and they've got special equipment on them, of course, and all that. So so we'll see where this goes, but it's definitely pushing the envelope.
I'm on board.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean,
so there you go. I think that right there is the type of stuff you need if the industry is going to grow, if the EV market's going to grow. These are the types of innovations that have to happen.